I woke up from a decade-long nightmare to find my son scrubbing toilets in the tech empire I built for him, while my ex-wife's bastard son sat in my CEO chair, spending millions on cocaine and call girls. My boy didn't recognize me. He thought I was just another janitor hired to clean up the mess. He had no idea that the broken old man mopping floors beside him was his father, the founder of VortexCom, and that I had $600 million in offshore accounts waiting to burn their world to ash. But before I tell you how I destroyed them, let me tell you how I got here. My name is Thomas Mercer. I'm 67 years old. 10 years ago, I was on top of the world. I had just closed a deal that would make VortexCom the leading telecommunications provider on the West Coast. We were worth $800 million and climbing. I had patents worth another $200 million in development. I had a son, Matthew, who was 28 at the time, brilliant, kind, and ready to take over the company. I had everything except a wife who loved me more than my money. Victoria was her name. I met her when I was 50, still grieving my first wife who died of cancer. Victoria was 35, beautiful, sophisticated, and she came with baggage. A 1-2-year-old son named Ethan from a previous marriage. I didn't care. I loved her. I loved her so much that I ignored every red flag. I ignored the way she looked at my bank statements. I ignored how Ethan treated Matthew with barely concealed contempt. I ignored the prenup my lawyers begged me to sign. 3 years into our marriage, I got on a plane to Tokyo for a merger negotiation. The plane never made it. Engine failure over the Pacific. We went down hard. 14 people died. I survived. Barely. I washed up on a tiny island in the Marshall Chain with a fractured skull, broken ribs, and no memory of who I was. The locals found me. They called me the ghost because I wandered their beaches talking to myself, trying to remember my name. It took me 2 years to remember. 2 more years to convince anyone I was American. 3 more years navigating bureaucracy to prove I was Thomas Mercer. By the time I made it back to Seattle, I had been declared legally dead for 7 years. My son had been named my heir. My company should have been his. I landed at SeaTac on a Tuesday morning in March. The rain was coming down in sheets, the kind of rain that turns Seattle gray into Seattle black. I had $47 in my pocket, clothes donated by a missionary, and a phone number from my lawyer scribbled on a piece of paper that was dissolving in the rain. I took a bus to Capitol Hill. I stood outside the VortexCom building, the glass tower I had commissioned, and I stared up at the logo that still bore my initials, TM, Thomas Mercer. Except now, I would learn, it stood for something else entirely. I walked into the lobby. It had changed. The modern minimalist design I chose was gone, replaced with gaudy gold fixtures and marble that screamed new money with no taste. The receptionist was young, blonde, and looked at me like I was a rat that crawled out of the gutter. "Can I help you?" Her voice was ice. "I need to see Matthew Mercer," I said. My voice was rough. 10 years of not speaking English properly had rusted my tongue. "Do you have an appointment? I'm his father." She laughed. "Mr. Mercer's father is dead. Security, we have a situation." 2 guards appeared. They were gentle but firm. They escorted me to the sidewalk and told me not to come back. I stood there in the rain, watching employees come and go. Young people in expensive suits, laughing, living the life I had built. None of them knew the foundation was built on my blood and sweat. I waited. I knew Matthew would come out eventually. He always left at 6 p.m. He was punctual like his mother. But when 6 p.m. came, the man who walked out of the building wasn't my son. It was Ethan, Victoria's son. He was 22 when I left. Now he was 32, tall, arrogant, wearing a suit that cost more than a car. He walked to a Tesla, parked in the spot labeled CEO. My spot. I approached him. "Excuse me. I'm looking for Matthew Mercer." Ethan looked at me with disgust. "He's busy. Who are you?" "I'm a friend of his father." Ethan smiled. It was cruel. His father's dead, drowned like a dog. "Now get lost before I call the cops." He got in the car and drove away. I went to Matthew's apartment. The address, I remembered. When I got there, the building was different. Renovated. Expensive. I buzzed the apartment. No answer. I asked the doorman. He told me Matthew Mercer moved out 8 years ago. He didn't know where. I spent 3 days searching. I slept in shelters. I asked people on the street. Nobody knew Matthew. Nobody cared. On the 4th day, I went back to VortexCom. I waited outside until midnight. That's when I saw him. A man came out the side entrance. He was pushing a cart full of garbage bags. He was thin, too thin, wearing a janitor's uniform that hung off his shoulders. His hair was long and greasy. His face was covered in stubble. But I knew him. I knew those eyes. It was Matthew. I walked up to him. My heart was pounding. Matthew. He looked up. He looked at me with empty eyes. "Do I know you?" "It's me," I said. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to cry. "It's Dad." He stared at me. Then he laughed. It was a sad, broken sound. "You're not the first guy to try that scam. My father died 10 years ago. Leave me alone." He pushed the cart past me and dumped the bags into the dumpster. I followed him. "Matthew, listen to me. I survived the crash. I was lost. I came back. I'm your father." He turned around. His face was hard. "My father abandoned me. He got on a plane and never came back. He left me with nothing. He left me with her." Her? Victoria. The woman he married. The woman who took everything. He looked at me with something close to pity. "You look like you've had a rough life, old man. I get it. But I'm not your son. I'm nobody's son anymore. I'm just the guy who cleans the toilets." He walked back into the building. I stood there in the alley, the rain mixing with tears on my face. My son didn't believe me. My son was broken, and I had no idea how bad it really was. I spent the next week infiltrating. I got a job at VortexCom. It wasn't hard. They were hiring janitors. I lied on my application. I said my name was Tom Rivers. I had no ID, but the staffing agency didn't care. They needed bodies. I started the next Monday. I worked the night shift. I mopped floors. I cleaned bathrooms. I emptied trash. And I watched. I saw Ethan strutting through the halls like a peacock. I saw Victoria, older now, but still beautiful, still cold, holding court in the executive suite that used to be mine. And I saw Matthew. He worked the same shift as me. We cleaned side by side. He didn't talk much. He kept his head down. But I talked to him. I asked him questions. Slowly, he opened up. He told me his story. When I died, Victoria became the executor of my estate. She had married me without a prenup, which meant she inherited everything. But Matthew was my biological son. He should have inherited the company. Victoria argued in court that Matthew was emotionally unstable, that he couldn't handle the responsibility. She had doctors testify. She had records. Records I later learned were forged. The judge awarded her temporary guardianship of the company until Matthew turned 30. By then, Victoria said, he would be ready, except Matthew never made it to 30 as a free man. On his 29th birthday, he got into a car accident. He hit a pedestrian. The pedestrian died. Matthew was arrested for vehicular manslaughter. He swore he was sober. He swore he didn't do it. But the toxicology report showed cocaine in his system. He was convicted. He served 3 years in prison. When he got out, he had nothing. Victoria had sold his apartment to cover legal fees. She had drained the trust fund I set up for him to pay restitution to the victim's family. She offered him a job cleaning toilets in the company his father built. She told him he was lucky she was being generous. She told him he was a convicted felon and nobody else would hire him. Matthew took the job. He had no choice. He needed money. He needed to survive. And he believed every lie Victoria told him. He believed he was worthless. I listened to his story, my blood boiling. But I didn't tell him who I was. Not yet. I needed proof. I needed evidence. I needed to be smart. I started digging. I had access to the building at night. I had keys to every room because janitors need to clean everywhere. I went into Victoria's office. I found her computer. It wasn't locked because she was arrogant. She thought nobody would dare. I found files, emails, contracts. Victoria and Ethan had a plan. They had planned it from the beginning. The marriage wasn't about love. It was about the company. They knew I was worth millions. They knew I had no other heirs except Matthew. So they set a trap. The car accident wasn't an accident. They hired someone to tamper with Matthew's car. They drugged him at a party the night before and planted cocaine in his system. They paid the pedestrian's family to testify. They bought the judge. They destroyed my son to steal his inheritance. And they weren't done. I found emails between Victoria and Ethan discussing a new plan. They were going to sell VortexCom to a Chinese conglomerate for $1.2 billion. They were going to take the money and disappear. The sale was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. I found one more thing. A medical file. Matthew had been in a car accident, yes, but the accident was worse than I thought. He suffered a traumatic brain injury. He had memory problems. He had depression. He needed medication. Victoria was supposed to provide it through the company insurance. She didn't. She cut his benefits. She told him he didn't qualify. She let him suffer because it was easier to control a broken man. I wanted to kill her. I wanted to walk into her office and strangle her with my bare hands. But that would make me the monster. I needed to be smarter. I needed to destroy her, the way she destroyed my son. I called my lawyer. The number I had was old, but the firm still existed. I asked for Jonathan Price. They told me he retired. I asked for his cell. They gave it to me. I called him from a payphone. Jonathan? It's Thomas. Silence. Then Thomas Mercer? Yes. You're dead. I'm not. I'm alive. I need your help. We met in a coffee shop in Fremont. Jonathan was 70 now, gray and slow, but his mind was sharp. He listened to my story. He looked at the evidence I had printed from Victoria's computer. He nodded. This is enough, he said. We can take her down, but we need to be smart. If we go to the police now, she'll run. She has resources. She has connections. We need to catch her in the act. The sale, I said. We let her sell the company. Then we hit her. Jonathan smiled. It was a predator's smile. Exactly. You sign an affidavit declaring you're alive. We file it with the court the day before the sale. The sale becomes void because the company never belonged to her. She committed fraud. She goes to prison. What about Matthew? We'll need medical records. We'll need proof she cut his benefits. We'll need proof she framed him for the accident. That's harder. That will take time. I don't have time, I said. He's falling apart. Then we do both, Jonathan said. We hit her with the fraud, and while she's reeling, we hit her with the conspiracy. I went back to work that night. I cleaned, I watched, and I waited. I became friends with Matthew. I brought him food. I listened to him talk about his mother, his real mother, the one who died when he was young. He missed her. He wished she was still alive. He said maybe things would have been different. They would have been, I said. 2 weeks before the sale, I made my move. I went to the hospital where Matthew had been treated after the accident. I requested his medical records. They told me I couldn't have them without his consent. I told them I was his father. They said his father was dead. I told them to run my fingerprints. It took 3 days. When the results came back, the hospital administrator called me into her office. She looked at me like I was a ghost. Mr. Mercer, this is impossible. It's not, I said. I survived, and I need those records. She gave them to me. I read them. I learned that Matthew's injuries were severe. He needed surgery. He needed therapy. He needed medication. Victoria signed off on the initial treatment. Then she stopped. She told the hospital Matthew refused further care. She told them he was non-compliant. It was a lie. Matthew never refused. He didn't even know he needed care. I took the records to Jonathan. He added them to the file. We had everything. We just needed the right moment. 1 week before the sale, Victoria held a company-wide meeting. She announced the sale. She said VortexCom was being acquired by Tiencom Industries for $1.2 billion. She said it was a great opportunity. She said everyone would keep their jobs. It was a lie. I knew from the emails that Tiencom planned to gut the company and sell the patents. I stood in the back of the room with the other janitors. I watched Victoria smile. I watched Ethan stand beside her, his hand on her shoulder. I watched Matthew in the corner, emptying trash cans. Invisible. After the meeting, Ethan approached Matthew. I was close enough to hear. "Hey, janitor," Ethan said. "Make sure you clean my office extra good tonight. I'm having a party. Important clients. I don't want to see a speck of dust." Matthew nodded. "Yes, sir." Ethan laughed. "Sir, I like that. You know, your dad would be so proud. His son cleaning toilets. That's quite a legacy." Matthew's hands clenched. I saw the rage flicker in his eyes. But he said nothing. He just walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my son, about the life he should have had, about the man he could have been. I thought about Victoria and Ethan, living in luxury, laughing at his pain. I thought about the justice I was about to deliver. The next morning, I went to the courthouse. Jonathan met me there. We filed the affidavit. We filed the medical records. We filed the evidence of fraud. We requested an emergency hearing. The judge scheduled it for 2 days from now, the day before the sale. I went to work that night. I found Matthew in the break room. He was eating a sandwich that looked like it had been made 3 days ago. I sat down next to him. "Matthew," I said, "I need to tell you something." He looked at me. "What?" "Your father isn't dead." He sighed. "Not this again." "Listen to me," I said. I pulled out a photo. It was old, faded. It was a picture of me and Matthew when he was 10. We were at a baseball game. He was wearing my cap. He was smiling. Matthew stared at the photo. His hands started shaking. "Where did you get this?" "I've had it for 30 years, I said. "It survived the crash with me. It's been in my wallet ever since." He looked at me. Really looked at me. I saw the moment it clicked. The recognition, the disbelief, the hope. "Dad?" "Yes." He dropped the sandwich. He stood up. He took a step back. "No, you're dead. You died. I buried you." "You buried an empty coffin," I said. "I survived, Matthew. I was lost. But I came back. I came back for you." He started crying. Not the quiet tears of a broken man. The loud, gasping sobs of a child who thought he was alone. I stood up. I hugged him. He collapsed into my arms. "I thought you left me," he said. "I thought you didn't want me." "I never left you," I said. "I was taken from you, and I'm going to get back everything they stole." I told him everything. The crash, the island, the return, the investigation, the evidence, the plan. He listened, and with every word, I saw the light come back into his eyes. The spark of the man he used to be. "What do I need to do?" he asked. "Tomorrow, you go to the courthouse. You testify. You tell them what Victoria did. You tell them about the accident, the drugs, the insurance. You tell them everything. And then we take back what's ours." The hearing was at 10 a.m. The courtroom was small, packed with lawyers. Victoria sat at the defendant's table, her face pale. Ethan sat next to her, looking confused. They didn't know what was happening. They thought they were being sued by a former employee over unpaid wages. Jonathan had been clever with the filing. The judge entered. Judge Martinez, a woman in her 60 seconds with a reputation for hating corporate fraud. Jonathan stood. "Your Honor, I represent Thomas Mercer, the founder and rightful owner of Vortexcom Industries." Victoria stood up. "Objection. Thomas Mercer is dead." "That's what we're here to determine," the judge said. "Mr. Price, present your evidence." Jonathan called me to the stand. I walked up. I placed my hand on the Bible. I swore to tell the truth. Victoria stared at me. Her face went from pale to white. She knew. "State your name for the record," the judge said. "Thomas Andrew Mercer." "And you claim to be the founder of Vortexcom Industries?" "I don't claim it. I am." The judge asked me to prove it. I gave her my fingerprints. I gave her my DNA. I gave her the details of my life that only Thomas Mercer would know. The name of my first dog. The street I grew up on. The scar on my left knee from a bike accident when I was 12. Things that can't be faked. She compared them to the records. She nodded. "Mr. Mercer, the The court accepts that you are who you say you are. Welcome back from the dead. Victoria's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, even if this man is Thomas Mercer, he was declared legally dead. The estate was settled. My client acted in good faith. Did she? Jonathan asked. He presented the emails, the evidence of the planned sale, the evidence that Victoria knew I might be alive but chose to proceed anyway, the evidence that she drained Matthew's trust fund illegally. The judge's face darkened. Mrs. Mercer, did you steal funds from Matthew Mercer's trust? I used those funds to cover expenses, Victoria said. Her voice was shaking. Expenses like your plastic surgery? Jonathan asked. He showed the receipts. Or your vacation home in Maui? Or your son's $200,000 Tesla? Victoria had no answer. Then Matthew took the stand. He told his story. The accident, the drugs he didn't take, the prison sentence he didn't deserve, the insurance Victoria cut, the medical care he never received, the years of pain. By the time he finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Victoria's lawyer looked disgusted. The judge made her ruling. Victoria Mercer, you are hereby stripped of all authority over VortexCom Industries. The company is returned to Thomas Mercer, effective immediately. Furthermore, you are ordered to repay all funds taken from Matthew Mercer's trust, plus interest. That amounts to $4.7 million. You have 30 days. I don't have that money, Victoria said. Then you'll sell your assets, the judge said. The house, the cars, the jewelry, all of it. And Ethan? I asked. The judge looked at Ethan. Did you participate in this fraud? Ethan was sweating. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Jonathan stood up. Your Honor, I have evidence that Ethan Holbrook forged signatures on multiple corporate documents. I also have evidence that he embezzled $2.3 million from VortexCom over the last 5 years. He presented the evidence. Bank records, forged checks, wire transfers to offshore accounts. Ethan's face went from white to gray. Mr. Holbrook, the judge said, you're under arrest. Federal marshals entered the courtroom. They handcuffed Ethan. He screamed. He begged Victoria to help him. She didn't even look at him. As for Victoria, the judge wasn't done. Mrs. Mercer, the district attorney will be reviewing these findings for potential criminal charges. Fraud, identity theft, embezzlement. You're looking at 20 years. Victoria collapsed. She fell to the floor, sobbing. I felt nothing. No pity, no remorse, just cold satisfaction. Matthew and I walked out of the courtroom together. The sun was shining. It was the first time in 10 years I felt warm. What happens now? Matthew asked. Now, I said, we rebuild. We take back the company. We fix what they broke, and we make sure they never hurt anyone again. We went to VortexCom that afternoon. I walked into the building as the owner. The receptionist who had laughed at me 3 weeks ago nearly fainted. Security escorted Victoria out. She left with nothing but her purse. Ethan was in a cell downtown, waiting for his arraignment. I called an all-hands meeting. Every employee gathered in the main hall. I stood on the stage, where Victoria had announced the sale. My name is Thomas Mercer, I said. I'm the founder of this company. I was declared dead 10 years ago, but I'm very much alive, and I'm here to tell you that the sale to Tiancom is canceled. VortexCom is not for sale. It never was. The room erupted in whispers. I raised my hand. I know many of you have questions. I know some of you benefited from Victoria's leadership. But I also know that many of you were hurt. If you were wronged, come to my office. We'll make it right. If you were complicit, you have 24 hours to resign. After that, I'm coming for you. 12 people resigned that day. Managers who had taken bribes, accountants who had cooked books. I let them go. The rest stayed. They wanted to believe in VortexCom again. Matthew became my second in command. We worked together to rebuild. We fired the board Victoria had installed. We brought in new leadership. We renegotiated contracts. We launched new products. Within a year, VortexCom was worth $1.1 billion. Within 2 years, $1.5 billion. Victoria was convicted on 14 counts of fraud. She got 18 years. She's in a federal prison in California. She'll be 68 when she gets out. She'll have nothing. No money, no reputation, no son. Ethan got 12 years for embezzlement and fraud. He's in a different prison. They don't let them communicate. Matthew got therapy. He got medication. He started to heal. He met a woman, a kind woman who saw him for who he really was. They got married last year. I walked him down the aisle. I gave a speech. I told everyone how proud I was. I told them my son was the strongest man I knew. As for me, I'm 67 now. I've lived more than most men. I survived a plane crash. I survived a decade on an island. I survived seeing my son broken. And I survived the fight to take back what was mine. I learned something through all of this. The most dangerous enemies are the ones who smile while they stab you. Victoria thought I was gone. She thought she had won. She underestimated the power of a father's love. If you're out there, fighting your own monsters, remember this: never give up. Justice might be slow, but it's inevitable. The truth always finds a way out, and when it does, make sure you're there to watch your enemies fall. If you enjoyed watching Justice Be Served, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of retribution. Because in this world, the righteous don't always win, but when they do, it's glorious.